Shank, and I'm the director of the Homewood Art Workshops, the undergraduate visual arts program here at Johns Hopkins University. And I just want to welcome you to the 6th annual Spring Visiting Artist Lecture at Matten Center. This is a really wonderful event, and I'm glad that so many of you came to share it with us. Sometime late in 1975, my dear friend Tom Chalkley, who's sitting right there, handed me a copy of Arcade, the comics review. It looked like this, only without the protective shrink wrap covering. And it changed my life a little. Arcade was the brainchild of Bill Griffith and Art Spiegelman. As co-editors, they published the work of their most talented contemporaries, including Robert Crumb, Justin Green, Willie Murphy, Diane Newman, Kim Deitch, S. Clay Wilson, Spain Rodriguez, and Aileen Kaminsky. This issue of Arcade was where I saw my first Zippy cartoon. Only this was no mere 3 or 4 panel comic strip. This was a 10-page epic titled Fool's Paradise Revisited, in which a berserk pinhead in a polka dot muumuu runs amok with the hallucinated ghost of William Randolph Hearst in his San Simeon castle. Magic. Although it lasted only 7 issues in the mid-70s, Arcade left its mark. It laid the groundwork for the 2 most significant series of alternative comics in the following decade, Crumb's Weirdo and Spiegelman's Raw. Griffith would contribute to both while creating and syndicating Zippy as a weekly comic strip. In 1985, William Randolph Hearst III asked Griffith to do Zippy 6 days a week for the San Francisco Examiner. Seriously, you can't make this stuff happen. The following year, King Features Syndicate helped Griffith take the daily strip to a national audience. Sunday color strips were introduced in 1990, and today Zippy appears in about 200 newspapers worldwide, locally in the Baltimore Sun. Zippy himself has calmed down quite a bit since his madcap romp at San Simeon, and I personally think that's a good thing. It's allowed Griffey to air out his cranky obsessions with roadside diners and advertising statuary, obscure cartoon characters of the 1940s, American mall and dirtball culture, high art versus low art, the bottomless cult of celebrity, and the siren call of the laundromat, and Poland, and Republicans, and taco sauce. I know I share many of Griffith's cranky obsessions, and the presence of all of you here today tells me that I'm not alone in that. Well, please join me in welcoming our friend and guru, Bill Griffith.
debuting him at one point with Sandings to Barnum, and when Zip came out, he said, "What is it?" And there you go, there's the story of Zip's name. He was actually born William Henry Jackson. That's his given name in 1842 in New Jersey. Now, you can't read it necessarily, but at the bottom of this page, the text describes that, and my great-grandfather's name is William Henry Jackson. He was born in 1842. I literally dropped the book when I read this. In 1975, I've been doing Zippy for 5 years. And I guess you could say, if you're cosmically inclined, that I was meant to do Zippy. Now, this is Zip as an older man. He actually performed in the sideshow from 1864 all the way to 1926. These are postcards issued in the 20s and 30s. His act consisted of random non sequiturs, but his dying words were supposedly, "We fooled him, didn't we?" Now, this is the first Zippy appearance. This is from a comic book called Real Pulp Comics #1, published in 1970. And the story here is, I gave my heart to a pinhead, and he made a fool out of me. It was an assignment, basically, from the editor of the comic book, Roger Brand, a fellow cartoonist in the underground days. And his only editorial direction to me was, do a really weird love triangle about two normal people and a very strange person. So I've been looking at photos of pinheads and other sideshow performances at a friend's house, another cartoonist friend of mine. And I remember seeing the movie, the Freaks movies, 7 years before. And it must have been that movie had made a stronger impression than I realized, because it stayed with me until this point when I wrote this story. I had no idea I would continue Zippy. This was to me just a one-shot idea. You can even see in the row beneath the splash panel that I gave him the name Danny when the strip started. He only became Zippy like about on page 5. I have no idea why that happened. And who knew 37 years later I'd still be drawing that little top knot every day. My first major character, continuing character in underground comics, was actually a character called Mr. Toad. He still makes appearances in today's daily strip. He was kind of egomaniacal, manipulative, a real wise guy. I guess I must have had some of those traits back then, so I have to take some blame for his personality. But luckily, in 1973, when this comic book came out, he was suddenly superseded by Zippy, who had just been making small appearances up till then. And you can see symbolically, at least from then on, Zippy is indeed in the driver's seat. You can see a logo on the left, below the word Tales, for the Cartoonist Co-op Press. It's a bit of esoteric comics history. This was cartoonists' attempt to, quote, save underground comics from bankruptcy in the mid-70s, when the Supreme Court had made a decision that pornography was to be set by local standards. Suddenly underground comics were being sent back in droves by comic book stores. This was our little attempt to kind of save ourselves, but the Cartoonist Co-op Press basically existed as a little table in my hallway, and we produced 4 comics and made exactly 0 money. But we did eventually spawn Arcade as a result of the same people. My particular take on comics, and perhaps on life in general, did not spring completely formed from my fevered brow. These are a few early influences on me as a kid, growing up in the 50s and 60s. This is Nancy and Slugger by Ernie Bushmiller. I actually picked a purely visual and iconic panel. There's